pass it off to Annie, and thank you very much. And I'll note in my introduction that Annie thought she was done getting homework from me quite a long time ago when she was my earth science student at Norwich High School, way back a while ago. I will not say quite how many years ago, but I'm going to hand it off to Annie. And thank you so much for joining us tonight. Take it away, Annie.
Thank you, Mr. Haas. So I'm Annie. I'm here with my husband, Keith, and my son, Monty. So it's a team effort here to run the Zoom and things. And, you know, we always work together. I live in Brooklyn, New York. I left the little town of Norwich, New York when I was 17 and never looked back. I actually have been to the Museum of the Earth and quite enjoy going to Ithaca quite often. Okay, so now I'm going to begin. I'm going to try to move the Zoom. Well, I'm going to share my screen. And I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so now you should see my screen, I think. Okay, so I was really excited when Mr. Haas invited me to come and speak. We actually have only seen each other's like Facebook posts for the last few years and admire each other's cats. So I impulsively said, yes, I'll do it. And then I started to think, oh God, you know, what do I do now? And that's akin to the beginning of any project. I call it the oh shoot phase. Like, oh, what have I done? How am I going to pull it off? And, you know, and when will it be over? But I've actually quite enjoyed going like a walk down memory lane, looking through my photographs and actually finding big holes where technology did not exist. I have like no photos from college. Very weird. But I had a pager, you know. So, okay, so I'm going to start. I had to really rack my brain. How does puppetry relate to science? And then I had to just start with puppetry because puppetry found me. I didn't go looking for it, but I do find evidence of it in my youth. I always had very elaborate Halloween costumes. My mother would make them or I would make them. This is me in kindergarten. We did a lot of things together, always making things. And I used to make elaborate Halloween costumes in the 7th grade, a particularly good one, which I don't have a photograph of, but I do have the design drawing from 1987. And I'm convinced that Julie Taymor of Lion King fame ripped me off big time. As you can see, the evidence, Exhibit 1. Anyway, we were a community theater family. We always would do theater in Sydney and Oneonta, and I was in plays. My mother was in plays, and I would get dragged along, and then we did plays together. That's me on the left, and Damn Yankees that she directed, and then on the right, I'm Annelle and Steel Magnolias. And then I went to this awesome theater camp that was part of a professional summer theater up in New Hampshire, and we did children's theater knockoffs. This was a illegitimate Ursula the Sea Witch in The Little Mermaid. We were definitely not supposed to be doing our own version of it. But then I was like, definitely going to NYU for theater. And I have a graduation picture because I couldn't really find any appropriate pictures from the college ages. But one summer, I went to a summer program at the Hangar Theater in Ithaca, New York. And it was a really expensive program for the young actors to go, but it was free to be a designer. So I was suddenly a designer. And I started using the name Annie Fresh, which was actually a fake DJ name from, I think from the 9th grade that Aaron Jepson had given me. And I was well on my way. So then during my senior year of NYU, I was in a play directed by this amazing woman called Janie Geyser, and she was a puppet artist. And we were forced to toil away in her awesome studio on the Lower East Side to make stuff for the production. So we just started, you know, making like these paper mache masks. We had to figure out how do we do it. And I sculpted this head and we made a mold for it. And we paper mached the inside. And I just stayed and stayed and stayed. And eventually Janie says, hey, do you want to come work for me? And so that was the beginning of a beautiful friendship. So this was actually a relief because I don't know if you remember Ms. Stoles, who was the art teacher in Norwich High School. I got a B- in 3D art. It destroyed my average. I was so upset. And look at me now, right? So, you know, you never know. You never know,
yeah,
kids.
She's I think she's still doing stuff in art fairs around.
She's probably watching right now.
Probably.
Oh no, shouldn't have said that. Okay, so after I graduated from NYU, I started working for Janie and then started building puppets in her style. So these were like wooden figures. And this is it's like a modified bunraku Japanese theater tradition of a full body puppet operated by 3 people generally. And unlike Japan, you don't have to train for 30 years before you get to operate the head. So you can see the structure of the puppets. We did a lot of paper mache faces. It was very, very low tech and very solid. These kinds of puppets will be around a long time. We're going to talk more about foam puppets, which degrade and have short lifespans. So let's see. So Janie got me an interview for my first like high profile job, which was The Lion King. And that cemented that Julie Taymor stole my design, as you can see here, Exhibit B. All right, we're going to stop sharing. Oh, wait, I got one more. So then working on The Lion King, I go down the hallway, my first day, I got my zebra on a wardrobe rack. I think I'm the coolest thing ever. And I see somebody I know from the community theater in Oneonta. And I'm like, he says, "What are you doing here?" And I'm like, "I'm a puppet wrangler. What are you doing here?" And he says, "I'm Simba." I'm like, "Oh, great." A great guy. He was called Jason Rothenberg in the old days, and he was Jason Ray's star of the original company of The Lion King on Broadway. And then this is on the left, that's me playing with the original baby Simba. And then on the right, that's my son, who has a knockoff version from the Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt version of The Lion King. So coming for full circle with that Lion King. All right, what's next? I'm going to stop sharing and talk to you all. Okay. So we're here to talk about science and puppetry. Are we talking about puppetry as a science, or how does science contribute to the world of puppetry? I don't know. So we're going to do both just so I get credit for the assignment. Okay, Mr. Haas? All right. So what is science? So the internet is telling me that science is the structure and behavior of the physical and natural world through observation and experiment. So I can definitely relate that to puppetry. And puppet people always have tons of stuff. They're collectors. They've got junk everywhere. So we're going to introduce a prop. Monty, the science bell, please. Yeah. So the science bell, Monty is going to ring the bell whenever we come anywhere near a science topic. And it's also just to make sure he's paying attention, because this is counting as his science class this week. We're homeschoolers. So there you go. All right, give it a test, Monty. Great. Okay, we're ready to go. So what is puppetry? Okay, so I didn't go to puppet school. There's actually a real one at the University of Connecticut. So I'm just talking about things that I know of, or things I've Googled or asked my friend Tim, because he knows a lot about puppets. So like a lot of the professional work I've done, we're talking about recorded in camera, in real time things, or stage performances, or street performances. So live things, not talking about animation or animatronics. We're talking about like jiggling dolls. So I just wanted to note that everything that I know is from being like surrounded by incredibly talented people. So I've been lucky enough to work with those. So, it's like I absorbed it via osmosis. Thank you, Monty. All right. So what is puppetry? So puppetry is the making and manipulation of puppets for some kind of performance. And what is a puppet? Anything can be a puppet, but most of the puppets in my world are figures like humans or animals. But of course, like on Sesame Street, we bring plenty of inanimate objects to life. And puppets are moved by human power. That's that the puppeteer controls them. And I'm also going to include remote control operation of puppets, because that's happening in real time too. So puppeteers are bringing something to life. They're doing actions. They're creating focus, expressing emotions, and making choices like a human actor would. And there's tons of these diehard puppet people who have wanted to be puppeteers since they were kids. So you have to watch out for those people. Okay, they're crazy talented. So there's not many people on earth that know what they want to do with their lives when they're 6 years old. So you have to, admire them for that, I think. So how does one get into building puppets? Generally, people come from 2 roads. There's a costume road and there's the fine arts road. And I came from a costume background through like theater work. Peace. Am I sharing?
No.
I'm going to share again. So can you guys see that? All right, so this is, I worked at a costume shop that made live show puppets. This is Yvette Helene Studio, and I learned a ton of stuff there. I went from working at the Public Theater, where I was like asked to distress, they'd make new costumes, but they had to look old. So I'd be like, you know, on the belt sander with some pants or making it look dirty. And it wasn't that fulfilling. It was kind of hard work, a lot of like, you know, washerwoman stuff. So going to Yvette's was very cool. We did a Blues Clues live, and these are the Rugrats, which was an animated show. And my first job with her was the live show. So it's like an arena show of the Rugrats. And then it went to theme park costumes. And these are actually the theme park costumes. And we got these down to a science. And I learned some really cool skills on this. Like the shoes, I was on the shoes and the head team. And the shoes were these big rubber shoes, and they were cast urethanes. So we'd carve these shoes out of foam and sealed them, sanded them, sealed them, and made molds for them, silicone molds with mother molds to keep it sturdy. And then these were slush molded. So you mix up the chemicals of the colors and you swing them around, you know, till the chemical cured. And then there was a whole process of finishing the shoe and doing the soling and grommeting and stuff. It was really cool. And then the heads were made of carbon fiber, which is this carbon fabric. It's like interlaced woven fabric that you lay into a mold, and it's like impregnated with epoxy resin stuff. And then it has a vacuum bag, and it sucks out all the air, and all of the vacuum bag sucks it into the mold. So it becomes very thin. It's very strong, very dirty to work with. But the guy that taught us these techniques was actually from the Lion King. He worked in the Michael Curry shop, this guy, Casper Hargraves, who moved to New York and taught us all these techniques. A lot of it was not very glamorous. We were doing like fiberglass mother molds on the roof in Brooklyn in 90-degree weather, wearing Tyvek suits. And we made a lot of these puppets. Like after like the 12th pair of Chucky sneakers, I was ready to do something else. So my coworker, Mary Bremer, who was an incredible artist, she told me about the Muppets, and I was never even thought that the Muppets were in New York. It was just when I was in high school, I'd never even thought of it, right? So she says, you know, you should go talk to this guy, Jim Krupa. He's working on this new show. And it was a Book of Pooh show. So it was our classic Winnie the Pooh characters. And I called him up. He says, come on over. I'll show you what I'm working on, which was, you know, so incredible. I'm like, okay, I'll come over there. And he was making mechanisms for the puppets. Jim Krupa is like he's the mechanism master, wonderful teacher, wonderful performer. I work a lot with this man. And he has an incredible mustache. You got to meet him. And he showed me the mech he was working on for Piglet. So Piglet had these little beady eyes, and then all of a sudden, this thing blinked at me. It was absolutely amazing. I just couldn't believe it. I'd never seen puppets with mechanisms. It just astounded me that was a thing. And now it was just like a ball painted black on one side, and this is actually a different puppet of his, but was pink on the other, and it would just flick, and it looked like it was absolutely alive. It was crazy. And then you could do little slide, just a tiny little pull of the trigger, and it would just give you like, oh, just a little look. And there's Piglet in action on the set. Because what happened was he said, I'm finished. Why don't you go down the street and talk to Matt Brooks, because they got to finish all these puppets. You know, they got a lot of work to do down there. So I met Matthew, and he says, well, you can be our shopper. You're overqualified, but I was like, I'll take it. I'll do it. And then I just found like all the weirdos in this little puppet shop, and it was awesome. So I jumped at the chance. These guys were playing crazy music, and it was just like, it was out of control. So I knew I'd found my people. Okay, so and I worked for 2 seasons on the Book of Pooh, and I also did additional puppeteering. I was a wrangler on set, and I was also at this time like sort of figuring out that I was a visual artist. It just sort of happened. I moved to Williamsburg. There were all these crazy parties where all kinds of crazy things were happening. I went to Burning Man, dude. So I discovered this underground scene, and there was this place called the Fake Shop, and you would enter there. You would go, you would open a refrigerator door and climb through the back of the refrigerator and through it into like this room with crazy inflatable sculptures and stuff. And it was so awesome. And I was like, well, I'm going to make inflatable art too. And that's just what I did. I started making these sculptures out of trash bags, and then it was and we taping, like packing taping trash bags together. Then it was I got the colorful tablecloths from the party store, but the tape didn't stick, so I'd have to do like I did like painting spray adhesive to make the tape stick. It was kind of a crazy process. And then I figured out heat sealing. I could iron it with wax paper. So I was making all these things, and these are all tents that you can go inside of. But although you know, it was really fun for parties and stuff. But the problem with party people is they want to pop your inflatable tents. So just about every single time someone deliberately stabbed it or something. So it got a bit frustrating. But I also had other things I was working on. I got really into like bicycle culture and decorating my bicycle for the Critical Mass ride that we had every month. So I was just sort of blossoming, and then I went to a party. It was a doctor and nurses party, because there's all these theme parties. And of course, I got my dates wrong, and I turned up in a clown suit at a doctor nurse party. So I met this woman because I stuck out like a sore thumb, this woman, Maureen Flaherty, and she says, "Oh, you want to make bicycles? I know where you should go." And she invited me to come to this arts collective called the Madagascar Institute. So I went over there, and you know, the first thing to do is give me an angle grinder, and I got to like cut metal, and it was so scary and so exhilarating. I was hooked on that. And there was a friend, I met a friend there who did bicycles, and we made a crazy toll bike for the clown again. There were a lot of clown bowling events, a lot of party clown action. And then we made this bicycle seesaw. We thought we were really cool. And I did a lot of events with the Madagascar Institute. We traveled abroad. We did street events. We did a reenactment of the Hindenburg in Union Square for the fun of it. On the left, you can see, so I tried to build like a real dirigible. It had a frame, it had a cover, but the like balloons inside of it did not work. So as you can see, necessity, mother of invention, the trash bags are actually really what's lifting it up. And we had a parade with Blimpie. We walked him down the street, and then we had a docking tower set up that it actually sprayed some kind of accelerant on top of it. So it wasn't real explosions, but you know, we thought we were crazy, and you know, it was pretty exciting. And then I got a couple more projects from them, just realizing like there's such potential. Like you could pull anything off. You get 15 people, like-minded people, you could do a lot of crazy stuff. And we had this amazing party one day. It was called the Festival of the Hurting, because our director had gotten hurt. So it was a celebration of all things hurting. And we raised a lot of money, and then we went to Rotterdam to this awesome festival called Robodoc. So we were supposed to do this other like pyrotechnic project where it was going to be like a chain reaction of different things catching on fire, but they couldn't get any of like the materials. So we had to come up with something else. So this is a double 360 swing driven by a car. They had an old car. They had like a crane and a forklift, and they knew how to use them. And we had previously at Madagascar, some of the guys had made a single 360 swing that they just pushed, and we brought it around town. And I said, well, why don't we do a double 360 swing driven by the car? So the car's wheels make contact with wheels on the pipe. So somebody was driving the car, honking the horn, acting crazy in first gear, most likely. And it would spin the swings around, and eventually the car broke down, but then we had gravity on our side. Okay. Don't want to forget about Monty's bell. All right. So then we had a condiment war. We did a lot of crazy things, but we were young and insane. But this is just all like, you know, figuring out how to make stuff and do stuff. So I wasn't too concerned about like being an actor anymore because I was enjoying all this weird stuff. But I did learn a lot on set, like working on the Book of Pooh and Bear in the Big Blue House, about the actual use of these performing objects, like how you build things for what they're ultimately used for, or the potential of how they're used for. Because when you're on set as a wrangler, they say, make Tigger hold a plate full of, bananas. And it's like, you got to figure out, how do I get a plate on this thing? And you got to do it, like problem solve it in seconds flat, and then implement it while everyone is like tapping their foot. Meanwhile, they will wait an hour for someone to put a light in the scene. Anyway, so a bit more about puppet people. Oh, I'm going to give you one more slide. This was another group we used to do funny things with. This is Chengwen and Chunk. So it was like a costume brawl between the forces of good and evil. And this is Chunk. And it was different themes, like had a marathon, they had a homecoming game. So I made the ball egg. And then we had like this crazy egg football game. And that's Chunk, the forces of evil. But there's like, we're all these like groups where, we would go and work on other people's projects. Let's see. So where are we now? Oh, so talking about back to puppet people. So puppet people, some people are just performers, some people are just builders, but most of the people are people who do everything. They're real control freaks. They design, they build, they write the words, they write the music, they perform, and of course they direct. So it's like a real multidisciplinary art form. And I think the science people might really like it. So how do you know what to do with a puppet, right? So we're gonna get back to science, right? Okay, so we had to have a scientific thought. I have to come off this. Actually, no, I'm not gonna share, come back from the screen. All right, so the things that we see in these puppet objects coming to life are things that we recognize in ourselves or things in our world. As humans, we understand a lot of nonverbal communication and can comprehend qualities of movement, like, when someone's mad, you just know because you can tell. So I think they're really smart and they pick up on so much of what the language of movement is. So the way that we move our bodies is an expression of our feelings. So when you're bringing a puppet character to life, you're drawing on the knowledge of what you've observed in the real world, and you're performing this behavior. Right? That's related to that science topic. Anyway, so a lot of puppetry for children can go really heavy in the tropes and stereotypes and hits you over the head with like cliches, but you get it. But what can be so special about puppetry is when you have a really talented puppeteer and it's quite a genuine moment, and you really cannot believe that like this mouse made out of a sock is like, going through some like really, important moment in his life. Yes, Monty. Nothing. Okay, he's raising his hand. Okay, so let's talk about making puppets then. We talked about the weird lady that somehow started making puppets. Let's talk about actual puppets. We're going to talk about the different kinds of puppets, because you can categorize puppets basically by how they're operated. So from above, from below, or behind. And there's always exceptions to the rule, but a lot of people have heard of marionettes. I found this clip of this is a rod puppet that I put some monofilament on to make it a marionette. And it was just kind of funny from a movie that was not completed, but here's a marionette.
Okay, action.
Rat in toilet. Okay, so that was the only thick clip I had of a marionette. All right, and so then there's this other style of marionettes. They're called marionette. It's called a check marionette, which has a solid rod out of the head. And this was the only reference I had for that. Also a toilet. So this is I don't know if you could see. I don't know if you see my pointer, but he has a solid rod coming out of the top of his head that the puppeteer is holding and operating. So they are working from above with a solid rod. And this is a picture from my buddy Tim Lagass's movie Sammy and Sofa. And I believe the shark's coming out of the toilet. I'm not sure he's actually going to the toilet, but so that is a check marionette style. So puppets that operate from below, let's see, are like Muppets, And that is, I have to brag, that's my character from Jim Henson's Emmett Otter, the new musical, and that's Paul Williams. And that is Old Lady Possum. She is a hand puppet. So I have one hand that goes in her head and then operator arms with 2 rods. And then let's see. Then this is a rod puppet. This is a puppet I created called Octocat. This is for the Adafruit company. They have a program for children called Circuit Playground, teaching electronics to kids. And we'll see later in the slideshow some more puppets I made for them. But if you are a GitHub user, you will recognize the Octocat. But as you see, it's a rod, it's a solid rod below. And this one has a mechanism. So the head tips and also has a little trigger for a mouth. So that's a rod puppet. And then also from below, you got like a parade style. So this is, a big one held up on poles. This was for a Rob Thomas music video. We had to do like a fake, what was a peace parade. So we had like a hippie bus and a bunch of, we had that's the Bluebird of Happiness, maybe, I'm not sure. But that is another one operated from below. So then the next category is operated from behind. Oh wait, I got one more from below. That's a glove puppet. That's Monty. We did a lot of these little Punch and Judy style puppets. I made some blank ones. We all decorated them at school. So then from behind, operating from behind, this is another, this is a Muppety guy. This is Yancey Woodchuck from Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas musical. So you can see the 3 guys. And this one, the guy on the right, he's operating the head, the mouth, and then with his right hand, that his left hand is on a body rod around the butt of the puppet. And then the guy in the green shirt, he's doing the hands, they're live hands. So they're like fabric gloves. So it looks like he's playing. And then the guy on the left, he is doing the feet. And this is the second time we've done this production. We did it originally at the Goodspeed Opera House in Connecticut. And the performer, who was Yancey Woodchuck, actually could play the banjo. So the puppet was truly playing the banjo. And since he's also the voice of the puppet, he was throwing his voice. There was a different puppeteer doing the mouth. So it was pretty cool to figure out that. And so in a theater situation, the puppeteers would all be in black, typically. And then on a green screen, here's everybody in these attractive spandex outfits. That's me on the right, actually. And we have a mesh over our face so we can still see the monitor. When you do TV work, you play the frame and you watch the monitor, unless there's some like little thing that you have to look live for, small moments. But generally the TV people are looking at the monitor. And that's this was an Optimum Online commercial. And I don't know if the director has joined us. He was invited to come. Steve Oakes at Curious Pictures directed this commercial. It was actually really cute. Tons of puppets. It was done in English and Spanish, and it's on YouTube if you want to see it.
Steve is here.
It's 877-333. It has like a very catchy tune, so I'm just warning you. And let's see. And then, so I guess I'm going to say so some puppets have to be modular. So like these puppets, for example, the bottom half could zip off and you could use them as hand puppets. Like these guys, you can see that's me on the right, Paul McGinnis on the left. We're operating it with our arm through the body of the puppet up into the head, kind of like this classic, hand and rod Muppet style. And then the next frame, now we're operating as a rear entry through the back of the head. So we're operating like it's a full body. So that way you can see their lower half fully. Okay, I got a couple little videos from here. I don't know how the sound level is going to be for you, but these are the masters in action. This is rehearsal, so you're going to hear, it'll be one of the many times. And this is not what the camera sees. This is just me taping.
Yeah, right. And then finally, you're just knocked off your feet. One more rehearsal with that in mind. All right.
Me encanta mi óptimo online. ¡Qué velocidad!
So it's pretty cool to see them come to life. Here's one more clip of these.
It's all so great. 877-333-4001. Get up to play, and you can say safe.
All right, you're up.
So that is done to track. Like the Book of Pooh show was actually done to track too. That means all the voices were pre-recorded. So that's a little different than having to know your lines or being familiar with your lines. A lot of puppeteers might not know their lines by heart because you can put your script up next to the monitor, you tape it up to the side. So that's kind of a little cheat people might not know about. I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. I'm all red. It's hot in here. We haven't done the air conditioner yet. Okay, so did I actually stop sharing?
Yes.
You did. You
Okay.
did. Yeah. And
All right. So
Steve is
sometimes a character already exists from like a cartoon or a comic. And then your job is to translate something that was never intended to be a puppet into being a puppet. So creating puppets from characters from animation is particularly difficult because in animation, these two-dimensional characters have limitless expressions and things. So making them in 3 dimensions, you have limitations because they're just existing as solid matter in the real world. So that's just physics, right, Monty?
Yep.
Okay, maybe it is. I don't know. I went to acting school, and you guys are having a snack in the middle of my presentation. This is great. Okay. So anyway, go eat in the living room, please. Okay. So it could be really hard to translate an existing design into a character costume because I don't know if you've noticed, cartoon characters have gigantic heads. So these are all problems that you have to solve, and there's certain sacrifices made along the way. Sometimes I'm given a puppet design, so someone else has drawn something with the intent for it to be a puppet. They've maybe even drawn a front view and a side view. But sometimes if they're not really a puppet designer, those 2 views have nothing to do with each other. So it's always interesting once you jump from the 2 dimensions to 3 dimensions. So I'm going to just go back to sharing. And I guess we'll go through. These are just some pictures of things I've made at home. These are like these are the friends and family projects. On the left, that's a costume character. Maybe there's a human in there. It's hard to tell. We did a music video that actually my husband Keith directed, and we decorated a van. You can see on the top, that's a real van. We had a marionetted tiny van. So we cut between the real van with the actors inside, the band inside. Really goofy stuff because we actually puppeteered the wings on the van as we're driving down the street. And then the middle are my characters, a blue thing and red cat. And then that's the superintendent of their building, Randall above, who's actually a doppelganger for SpongeBob Hairpants. We call them SpongeBob Hairpants. And then on the right is a sculpture I made. I was on this art reality show called Art Star, and this was one of my big projects. Was this bear that his head was stuck in a box, and you look in the holes in the box, and you could see you could see the little polar bear's movies, his dreams, going between enjoying paradise and then all of his the things that upset him were in the little movie. And then there's Ruthie and Baby Ruth. This was at a comedy show. Ruthie was trying to convince Judah Freelander that Baby Ruth was his love child, hence the glasses. It was all lies. And then this is the chef from the Pop-Ups, who are an awesome children's group. Then I'm going to get into some stuff from Henson, but I've worked on a lot of other things. I'm kind of like a I guess a permalancer at Henson over the last 20 years. So I work for them, but I've worked on a show called Blues Room and Johnny and the Sprites. I mean, I've worked on a lot of things, and I've been doing a lot of props lately for my friend who's a prop master. So what are we going to see now? So the deal with Henson is we do Sesame Street's like the main thing that we do, but there's a lot of third-party things. Live shows, we've been doing things with Princess Cruise Line. We do a lot of things for Heather Henson, who's Jim Henson's youngest daughter. And Henson doesn't own the Sesame Street characters anymore. Actually, Sesame Workshop, which is the former children's television workshop. If you're as old as I am, you probably remember that phrase on the show. So we're really just at Henson, we provide the production services to make the puppets. It's basically the same people, same organization who's been making them all along. So we're going to have a look at some of the Henson projects. This was called The Secret Silk. This is on like 4 different Princess Cruise Lines. And the one on the left is the first one I made. And it's a crane puppet. And it was meant to be like origami inspired. And so that is the first one. But then someone high up in the Henson family said, oh, this looks too much like my sister's puppet. This one, it's like, okay, yeah. I mean, how much different can you get with a crane? Different, but they're still the same animal. So then the one on the right that I did these like, what are they, hexagons? Hexagon neck as a modification to make everybody happy. And it kind of goes more with the origami feel. Anyway, okay, lots of birds. Okay, oh, and here's, I don't know if you guys saw the Happy Time Murders, which was not for children, but we did build the puppets and a lot of the puppets in the East Coast Henson Creature Shop. And this is Goofer. He's a sugar-addled, unfortunate man who's fallen from grace. And this puppet, we had to make 3 puppets of the same character. And one was he was a child's TV star, so like clean cut, well put together. Then there was this one where he's got a problem with sugar. And then the third one was his dead body. And this was, 3 of the same puppets. There's a lot of multiples. And speaking of multiples, on the right, you can see, this is called a humanette. This is Monty modeling the Oompa Loompas from Broadway's Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And I think we made 43 of these, slightly different sizes and stuff, but it was for the Broadway, which then went out on tour and all their swings. So we made a ton of these humanettes, and they had crazy wigs, and it was pretty cool. And then we got, there's a show called Pajanimals that was a Henson production. Oh, sorry, this cat's going wild. And this is Granny Pearl. And she was one of these puppets, like, it's a weird shape. How do you do a turtle like a hand puppet? So she was a bit modular. I had to figure out how to like unzip the lower portion of her belly so she could operate like a hand puppet, like vertically or horizontally, because they wanted to see her like all of her limbs like on the ground like a turtle. And then this guy on the right is Jerry the bear, and there's puppets called bag puppets, like Cookie Monster's a bag puppet. He's just a lump of fur. This guy has a little bit of structure underneath him, and some of them do have a bit of structure, but he's basically just a big furry bath mat. And he's also a live hand puppet, so he's got fingers that move. And when I worked on the Book of Pooh, nobody had live hands. It was so hard rigging all these props, and they had arm mechs, so the arms would go like this. You had to stabilize the arms with something big and heavy. And when I went to work on Sesame Street, I was like, this is amazing. You have puppets that can hold things. It was a true revelation. So these are some other fun, these are some Sesame Street projects. This is the Humpty Dumpty, and Polly Smith made this beautiful costume for him. He's really just an egg that I sanded for like 4 days. Vinyl does not like paint. And on the right is a big bird fish. It was everybody got turned into fish in one episode. So I got to make a big bird. And one more picture of my little son riding a cow. That was a cow for Sesame India, I believe. We have like 30, I don't want to give a number, but there's been many international co-productions over the years. Often they'll have the same core characters. They'll have an Elmo, and they sometimes have like instead of Big Bird, they will have another costume character as their main, as their big person, like Zelly Boba, and there's a bunch of puppets. Germany seems to be, the German puppets seem to be very popular. I just refurbed a German Bert, which was pretty exciting. And then I was assigned to make Cookie Monster in drag, and I just thought that was such a funny picture. A revamped Ladybug Picnic. These are little rod puppets, and is it so cute how they have their little picnic table? And then this is from a new Princess Cruise show, where they're doing classic Jim Henson bits. And so if you're ever on a cruise ship, a Princess Cruise, they have quality puppet entertainment. And I don't know if anybody recognizes this. This is the new trash heap for the reboot of Fraggle Rock. So you cannot appreciate all of the work that is underneath this, but we can appreciate the beautiful work that I did. I did the understructure and the eye mechanism. It does blink, and I did it's actually needle felted, the entire thing underneath those leaves. It's pretty incredible, and a lot of help from people at the workshop prepping leaves and gluing on trash, and Jason Weber, who's the creative supervisor. He's an amazing painter. I'm not allowed to paint, but that's not true. Just kidding. And I don't know if anybody knows what this is. If you recognize these cankles, this are some Miss Piggy shoes, because you would think hand puppets don't really need shoes, but I guess they do when they have legs. And it's so weird because Henson doesn't own the Muppets, like Disney owns the Muppets, but there was the Muppets movie with Jason, what's his name? Oh, I can't remember. So it was the Muppets, and we got the contract to provide the costumes. So that was really cool because they sent over like all the Muppets, because I hadn't seen all of them in person, because I never actually worked on the Muppets. So that was really cool. All right. Anyway, I'll just keep talking, Mr. Haas. Okay, if you're happy. All right.
I'm eating it up. I'm eating it up.
All right, good. All right. So I guess I'm going to get back to that was just a walk down memory lane. So let's say we have to make a puppet, right? I'm going to stop this. I'm going to stop the share. Okay. So say we have to make a puppet. What are we going to do? First, we're going to freak out, right? We're going to have the oh shoot phase. Then we're going to ask 100 questions like, well, first of all, when do you need this by? Because they always need it like a week from now, and have it planned accordingly. And then, is there a design? What style do you think the puppet should be? What's it for? Is it for a live event, or does it have to last 53 years, right? And what does the puppet have to do? And the answer is always everything. And it's like, well, we can't do everything, but they always wanted to do everything. And often that's the job I get. It has to be a hand puppet and a full body puppet and be a puppet on a stick at the same time. So, and what's the scale of the puppet? Size is always, really important, because it's a real thing, right? So how many puppeteers are you going to use? Does it have rotted hands or live hands? Should it have mechanisms? And, once you get like these broad questions answered, you just keep zeroing in on the levels of detail. And then you start thinking about materials and the methods of construction. But at a certain point, you just have to say, I am going to have to start building a puppet. We can't talk about it anymore. So we're going to scale up the design, generally like to the full size of the puppet on paper. So you might be surprised that there's a lot of math in puppets. So we love to use the photocopier, of course, though. We often use existing puppets to discuss the size, like, well, it's going to be so-and-so's body, but the head of so-and-so. And sometimes we even cheat and use existing patterns because a lot of work has already been done, So there's a ton of measuring and altering, like how do you get an arm in there? How do you get a hand in there? Sometimes we make a small sculpture and blow up and we put masking tape on it, and you could blow up those patterns. That is a method. So this stage when you start building is called the mock-up stage. You're just crashing out a 3D shape. It's for a first look and then a response to see if you're on the right track. And we take photos. Now we do videos quite easily. And we have a photo area at Henson where I always say to my friend Laura McLean, amazing performer and wrangler, come in here and put this puppet on. So I have I can't show any of those kinds of videos of mock-ups saying funny things, but it's a hoot. So the mock-ups are not in our best foam because the puppet foam is actually very expensive. So we're not even allowed to mock up in the fancy foam anymore. So we use upholstery foam. And when you're starting to do the mock-up, you're thinking about the materials, and you always have to consider what are the goals of the materials, that they have to be lightweight, durable, breathable, economical, and most importantly, available. Because often it's no one has an idea for a puppet show and then gives you 3 years to work on it. It's always oh, we're going to do this, on Thursday. So, having stuff in hand often dictates what you're gonna use. There's so many different kinds of foam. It could be a lesson in chemistry. I think this is all made from petroleum products. And different foams have different lifespans before they turn to dust. Things that can advance the degrading of the foam seems to be sunlight and moisture and sweat and abrasion, although the scientists here could probably add to that list. And foamy puppets aren't forever. It's so sad. I'm gonna share again. Okay, so here we are. This is blowing things up, just getting things on paper, trying to figure out how big they are. So this was I got the Adabot for Adafruit Industries, and I'm trying to make Minerva, who's the owl here. And I was that owl looks a bit big. So then I made a 14-inch owl. And then I covered up the bottom because these are operated like hand puppets for the most part. So I blocked off the bottom to sort of visualize. And it's yeah, definitely the 14-inch one looks better. So before you even get to shapes, you do a bit of reckoning. So and this is just a little model. This was somebody's body just as a starting point. And so you can carve a little object, you can sculpt a little object, and then take patterns off it. And you see the little notches, those are registration marks. So you know how to line up the patterns when you go to put them together again. And you'll also notice that they're labeled that's two tick is 2 flipped. So it's be 1, 2, 3, 4 on the other side, 1, 2, 3, 4 ticks on the opposite side, and side seams, that's the side seam. And then sometimes you have a cat who likes to help you with your patterns. That's Spock. And yeah, so there's basically 2 ways that you're going to put foam shapes together for puppets and costumes. So you're going to carve a block of foam, or you're going to flat pattern sheets of foam. And so carving a block of foam, you start making patterns of each profile. So this is a brain. This is something that was a stuffer inside one of the heads, but you have to make a record of it, because if you have to make another one, or if you're making alterations, it's not a very inspiring thing to look at. But so the first one on the left is a top view. The middle one is a front view. What did I say? Top view, front view, and then a side view. So you'll take the big block of foam, and you'll know where the centers are. You're gonna draw these 3 profiles, which I guess are X, Y, Z axis. Okay, so when you use the big bandsaw, you have to have a special puppet bandsaw. So this is the cool bandsaw with a riser in it, so it makes an extra long throat, so you can put in a foot, the 12-inch block of foam, which is really awesome for heads and giant feet and stuff. So that is the jam. But then you need an extra long bandsaw blade. So where did we go? This is another, this is somebody's foot, but you can see the same idea. You're going to do a profile of the side, the front, the top. It's, and then you're going to be finishing a foam shape with a blade, or curved scissors are often used. And then for something that's going to be not covered in fabric, you're going to want a really fine finish. And it's really the scariest thing ever is taking your carved foam head and putting it on the belt sander. And I don't know if you've ever used a giant belt sander. It's noisy, it's scary, and it wants to suck the carved head into it. So there's some people who are just so in tune with it. I cannot do it. This is about as much as I can handle, is like making a giant potato. And this was an episode of Sesame Street where Telly was training like Rocky, but it was all potato props, like potato dumbbells, and it was really silly. But I had to make piles of potatoes, and I was kind of working quick, and like every 2 minutes, some of the potatoes flying across the room. But I thought that was funny. Okay, so now flat patterning. So these are like from sheets of foam. So this is just like a simple sort of round shape. And you could see that it's cut out of similar shapes and butted together. So we glue these things, you cut them out with razor blades, or if it was a sturdier foam, you might do it on the bandsaw. But you're going to barge cement these, which is a contact cement. You're going to butt it together. And there's different densities of foam too. This is an example. This is Scott foam. This is like the industry standard foam. This is quite a thick version of it, but that was that's a big shape. So the different densities, like this is somebody's leg, and you could see the Scott foam is sort of the main part, and then the sort of, it's not so Scott foam is reticulated, has that texture, and then the soft foam is the whiter ones, and they compress. So you use a combination of things that you want to be sturdy and things that you want to smush, because basically the puppets, everything, it's got to move and it's got to bend in a sort of anatomical way. And what's cool about Scott foam, this reticulated filter foam, that is the industry standard, it holds a stitch, like it doesn't tear. Like normal, you had some like upholstery foam that tears, but the Scott foam is really strong, which is why at the top edge of this there is a little extra bit, because I had to sew there, so I like to sneak a little bit more in there. But this is the tragedy of the Scott foam, is it's really expensive, it's really hard to get, and it has like a 14-year lifespan. So, but we do a lot of refurbishment. So a lot of like Sesame puppets, their skins are reused and foam is replaced. You can take skins off and wash them, if things are not covered in feathers. So there's a sort of constant fixing of things. Okay, what else we got? This is a closed cell foam. This is called L200. There's also plastizote. So there's that's got no little holes in it. It's like, it's smooth, but it's very hot. It's not a breathable thing. But that's some Scott foam. There's other things like plastizote. I don't have a picture of that, but then this is somebody's little body, and we add costume boning to a lot of things because they just need a wee bit more structure. So there's often a spine and often things to keep the neck nice and round. And then there's another technique we do with the boning, which is spiral boning. And so how this works is, so the boning is like a fabric casing with either plastic inside or steel occasionally. And so the way you make shapes out of this stuff is you make a foam shape, like you can see on the bottom there's fabric over foam. So you drape your thing, you sew it up, you stick it back on the foam, and then you're gonna pin your spiral boning all around it, take the foam out, and then throw this thing to the machine for ages and ages. And then you take the foam out, and the foam is done. It was just the shape to get you to where you need to be. And this makes really cool things that are lightweight. A lot of like costume things use this technique. I use it in a few puppets. I actually have a picture of that. But you could see Bugsy is helping here, because during the pandemic I had been working from home for Henson. So this was another big boning project. You probably could guess what it is, but these were steel bones. This was not spiral. It was like concentric circles. And these things were long, it was heavy, the steel ones just like sprung in your eye. It was truly wrestling it. But Bugsy was a big help there. And then this is back to the build years ago now with the Optimum puppets. You can see the belly of this guy is boning because they had to do all this like the dancing and stuff. So it's a nice flexible thing. And since they had clothes on, you really could hide it. But I like boning stuff. It looks really cool too. Oh, then that's the evil glue. You got to wear a respirator. What's so good about Barge is that it's heat release, so it allows you to remove bits and pieces from it. So doing that refurbishment, that's why it's the industry standard, despite being so poisonous. And they changed the formula on this too. A lot of things have really gone downhill with their quality. Like the foam is kind of soft and the glue doesn't stick that well, but I guess that's progress. More about inside puppets. So this is what, if you ever wondered what was in the mouth, generally the mouths are gasket rubber, which is like a plumbing supply, or this little wood plate. This is aircraft ply, 1/8-inch aircraft ply. And then there's like fabric on the inside, in the mouth interior. And there's often some grips because you really got to be able to be united with the puppet when it's on your hand, because doing all this lip sync. So you can see there's often a thumb grip, or if the puppet has a very shallow lower jaw, maybe there isn't a grip, but you can see that little bit of neoprene there is like a bumper to help you hold on. And then you'll have that carved brain on top that will lock your hand in there. And people have different preferences. Everybody does it differently, but often you need grips to stay in that puppet. And then talk about covering on the left here. This is draping the puppet fleece. Your goal is always to have as few seams as possible. And you use a bit of the similar fabric, and then you trace that to make your pattern and use that to cut it out. And this is a Python from Adafruit. And then, dun, 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 I don't know if anybody has watched Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt. I made the backpack, Jan S. Port, and also performed her straps. And actually, I performed her voice one day that they left in and never looped, which was unusual. But this is, I guess we're gonna talk about mechanisms a bit. So Jan has eyebrows that move. And I unfortunately don't actually have a video of it, which I was shocked to find out. But you can see from the two different pictures of her, the position. So they basically pivot up, and they're independent of each other. So you can pull one or the other, and it's operated by a trigger and a slider. And we'll show you that in a minute. But this is, what's inside is basically, you got to have structure. So there's like an ABS plate. These are her little eyebrows, which is like a welding wire. And then this is what's inside is, it's a spring and a string. That's your basic mechanism. You got to pull something and it's got to return. So I don't know why I have such long springs. I don't know, but they probably don't need to be that long now that I look at this. But it was a quick project. But can you guys see my cursor? Okay. So these are the eyebrows here and here. So those are like the pivot points. And then there's a machine screw into this shaft collar. It's sort of doing double duty. So this is, when this moves, it'll hit this stop. So it's going, so it's up, down. So there's a stop below and a stop above. And then this is what the handle is. This is a thumb like slider. So it goes up and down. So that's one string. And then the other string, your thumb or your index finger operates this. So you do them on the same hand. And often on like a regular hand puppet, the arm rod would also be attached. So you would have it on your arm rod to go back and forth. Okay. And then that's just a picture of her mouth palette. She had a foamy palette in the pocket. This is Minerva. This was the Adafruit one. And this is her little mouth.
My name is Minerva. 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 Ah.
So that is this. And there's actually a spring hidden inside the top of the beak that you don't even see, but that's what's closing it. And then it's really just pulling a string through to this slider here. And the white tubing is Teflon, so it's nice and slippery. You do have to stabilize the tubing, so that's not swimming around. And there's a lot going on in this little thing. There is a tiny nylon hinge. Those Dubro products, I don't know if anybody has those little RC planes. They often use little pieces of that stuff. But I did want you to feel my pain. We'll go back to this. You see that zigzag? That's not, you can't buy that. This is all handmade. So having to plan out the descending zigzag with darts, it was just like, it was maddening, in fact. But I remember that was one Thanksgiving where I did that for a few days. It came out really nicely. But that's why puppets take a long time, and good ones can be very expensive. So this is Octocat. This was also for Adafruit. We saw her earlier. And this, we're talking about 3D printing now, because such an iconic character and so not a puppet design, right? Because it's what's going on with that body. He's got this tiny little mouth. It's totally top heavy. So it's kind of crazy. So I thought it has to be a rod puppet. Can't get a hand in there. And we had recently done a Lego minifig figure puppet at Henson that had this kind of little mouth that stuck out of a slot. And I was like talking to Jim Group about it. And it's like, yeah, it's got to be something like that. So we'll look at the mouth in just a sec. But I tried to model this thing. I tried. And I wasted a couple days trying. And then I called up my friend Victor de Los Angeles, who is an incredible modeler, and she just whipped it out. So I cannot take credit for modeling this beautiful thing, but I really wanted the thin shell. I wanted it to be hard. I didn't want to pattern it in foam and it just be mushy and lopsided. I wanted it to be, tight. So this is on the Ultramaker. Keith is a very, very good printer and has worked in the 3D printing business since the early days of MakerBot. We'd actually kind of stumbled upon it by accident because we went to the Hackerspace Resistor in Brooklyn because I wanted to check out some soldering that I was like, am I doing this right? Did I already tell this story? No. Mm-hmm. I did tell the story. Yeah. No. Okay. And we went over there and there were these guys working on this weird machine, and it was this motor going and churning out mountains and mountains of plastic on the floor. And we're like, what's that? And it's like, oh, we're testing to see how long it goes till it breaks or how many hours it can do this. And that was the MakerBot. That was Adam and Zach and Bree. That was their hackerspace. And then shortly after that, they were looking for a marketing person, and that's Keith's jam. So he started working with them. We did a lot of cool projects. And so we've had access to 3D printers for over 10 years. And while our modeling probably needs some work, we're good at thinking about things in plastic, right? So this is on the left. This is the back of the head. Victor made this beautiful little door and the ears come off. And on the right was just, oh yeah, this is gonna look good with the fleece, because it was gonna be fleece covered, because I still needed these. I still wanted to be like a cozy puppet thing. And honestly, finishing the PLA is no fun for anyone. So there's the face. So this had the slot measured in. And then on the right, so that's what that little mouth is. And it just gives the impression of it opening. That blackness is like open. And looking at it now, it's like, oh, that's kind of weird. Looks like a black tongue. But really, when it's in motion, you have to believe that it's, it's opening. It is a little bit of a stretch, but, we wanted to try to keep the character looking like the character. So there is a bit of give and take. And that's me in the backyard gluing the fleece on. And then my newest creation. This is the Mecha Cookie Monster, and he is just a PR puppet for the animated show. He's not in the show, but he was just on like CBS Morning show to introduce the new animated program called Mecha Builders. And he's definitely unusual. This guy was like closed cell foam covered in moleskin. It was an absolute puzzle. And that he has to unzip and be a hand puppet and a full body puppet. And he has to have a hammer that goes on his hand, and he has spring shoes like this. He's got all these bells and whistles and a second pair of arms because he's got rotted arms, and then the glove like live hands. So all of his finger joints are 3D printed and then covered in fabric. It's like sewn fabric. So, and then it's put on and glued on and then glued on the hand. So it's really quite a process. And since I had to do 4 hands, I was like, well, I'll print it. Right. So I have like, I can't remember now if all 4 of these, I think these are identical. These are identical. These are unique, and those are unique. I was trying, I was like, I cannot have every finger be unique because it was just so many files and keeping track of so much. And then the back of the hand, it's painted, and then this is fabric glued to it as well. Just a lot of detail. And then this is just one of his other nuts and bolts. And this was, finishing the PLA material is hard because it doesn't like to be sanded. It gets warm, it gets like sticky. It's not great, but it does print very nicely. So I have tried a few of the different coatings to make it easier to finish, but it still is kind of a pain. There's a lot of paint, a lot of Bondo and a lot of paint on this tiny little thing. So like if I was to make a bunch more of these, I would maybe cast this. Now that I have one really nice finished one, I might switch to casting, even though that sounds crazy, but you have to think about the time involved. And then I think probably what is this? This is like the LED section, because sometimes puppets have lights and sometimes they make me make puppets with lights. So this is the Ada Bot on the left and the robot from Sesame on the right. And that robot on the right was supposed to be a one-off, and he just will not die. He keeps coming back. Now he's got legs. He's been on a show in England. He's just like this like funny little thing. And since I'm not, I'm not an electrical person, I have to figure out how to do this. So of course I could figure it out. I can solder. I sometimes have people check my diagrams before I put everything together. And I sometimes use kits that people I know have made. So I think there's a lot of Evil Mad Scientist kits that are for like lighting up pumpkins and stuff are in the robot because it's already engineered, and this was kind of whatever you can get, sticking in. And then this is more LEDs. These are the Circuit Playground gang. And these turned out to be light up mouths, basically because I had no clearance to do a mechanical mouth. I was like, I just can't make this work. How about a light? And they're like, okay. So that worked out pretty well. This little resistor, it was like absolutely nothing, nowhere for things to move. So they're pretty cute. And then it's just a sheep jetpack because the sheep needs a jetpack, and little NeoPixels from, I use Adafruit products on my Sesame Street little dress. And then this is a detail of another thing. This was called the Stupendous Ball. It had to be the greatest ball ever.
Can I get a half apple, please?
With the whole Sesame Street.
One of those brown foamies.
So that was just yay. So that's the Stupendous Ball. So I had to figure out how to make 2 of these, because one was going to be just a ball on its own, and then the other one was going to be a rotted ball. So they could throw the ball in the scene and catch it, or the ball could be puppeteered through the scene. And my friend Todd Pollenberg made this crazy blinky thing. It was like a 6x6 LED array that you could program. So 36 lights and channels. And I thought, okay, well, let's try to use that. So I had to figure out how to do that. So I made this interior core, like establishing where the LEDs were going to live, and a chart, because I had the 3 colors. It was a real mind meld, and then having to solder it all together to the board. So those are the two balls, and then make them live inside the puppet ball. And then, is this a video? Yeah. What's crazy, right? but I really had to fill it. It had to be mounted on like an interior dome.
So did you do all the soldering yourself?
Yes, I did. Did a lot of soldering. I did it in the spray room. I sat up in there, so it was just a lot of soldering. So that is the stupendous ball. And Mr. Weber, who's our creative supervisor at Henson, he put all the spangly bits on it to make it look extra stupendous. He's also the master dyer. He does all the painting, and he's a really incredible artist. I have more, Don. I can't believe this. I should save it for another talk.
Yes, we can save it for another talk. That was great. And I'm going to open it up for questions, I think. Questions, comments, smart remarks, as they say. I thoroughly enjoyed that.
Oh, good. Hey, Steve Oakes is here, the guy who directed the Optimum commercial.
Awesome.
Steve, don't you have any questions?
We're a small enough crowd that you can just go ahead and unmute yourself and ask, or put it in the chat if you would like.
Annie, that was fantastic.
Oh, thanks, Steve. I got more.
I know you do.
But he left.
I just noticed I'm kind of silhouette. So
Oh, there you go.
as a ex-director, I'm concerned about lighting, and even though I so care about the puppets and the puppeteers, I also take time for the lighting director and the cinematographer. Yes, but we certainly did punish you in that commercial where you were all in your green spandex and crunched together for that epic puppet production. And I didn't realize how much. The puppets were fantastic, but your documentation of how you did your construction was not something that I was paying much attention to at the time.
Awesome. I've actually, I worked on another thing with you where I got slime thrown at me. Do you remember? It was a SpongeBob.
SpongeBob, yeah.
They were throwing slime in real time, but was the actual thing like slowed down or something?
Yes, we did super high-speed photography of SpongeBob being slimed, and SpongeBob was a puppet, so that it was eventually going to be a proper 2D animated SpongeBob, but we wanted real 3D slime looking to splash SpongeBob and reflect off of it. So we had a SpongeBob puppet, and we took real slime, the Nickelodeon trademarked chemical safe slime, and threw it at the puppet. And then we got rid of the puppet and put the 2D drawing. And it was a nice mixed media accomplishment. It's funny. I hadn't thought of that for a long time.
Yeah, well, we've done a few puppet things together. There was also is it Robert Pattinson?
Oh yes, the biggest seller of novels in America for the last 20 years, Robert Pattinson. And we were going to do a promotion for his books, and we did a likeness of him, and it was spectacular.
And there was a crazy fan. It was a female puppet. And
yeah,
they were kind of like spitting image puppets. I think
exactly. It was brilliant, and it was executed beautifully. And I'm sure you could go into great detail about the construction and performance. I think there was 4 of you behind there to articulate the hands and the mouth and the face, and it was so well received until James Patterson showed the commercial to his wife, and his wife said, "That puppet looks just like you. That is so embarrassing."
Oh,
And he pulled the plug after we spent like $200,000 making the commercial.
oh.
Yeah. And you didn't mention James Godwin, but you are the genius behind much of the construction of the puppetry of the performance artist James Godwin, who I'm a big fan of.
Oh, yes. James was in there. James was one of the ones in green as well. So we built all those Optimum Online puppets in this rat-filled basement on 19th Street that James and Tim Legasse and I used to share. We grew up. We don't have the bunker anymore, but good memories. Say hi to Steve. So Steve, I should say that Steve is I used to be Steve's intern. Actually, Steve is part of my my life's journey, because I went to Playwrights Horizons Theater School at NYU, and upstairs was this mysterious animation studio, which I didn't really know it existed until Janie Geiser took me there, and I went to push buttons for her. She was doing a Cartoon Network bumper or whatever you call it, and she would animate, I would push the button, and it was in Steve's business called Curious Pictures. And then I thought it was so cool, and it was like, oh, can I be an intern here? And so I went in the shop and I worked on your Wendy's commercial, like sanding. It was a spaceship Wendy's, and I sanded some little parts. And then I had some time with you because there was upholstering these seats for the spaceship. And I remember you're like, pull it, staple it, pull it. Okay. I'm like, all right. And I hadn't seen you in a long time. But then started working together on these puppet things. But Steve's mostly was an animator and well known for your MTV spots, like the MTV Sandwich and the Spaceman, what else?
The early days of MTV. Yeah, we did all of those 10-second animated logos, and then we worked on Pee-wee's Playhouse, which had a lot of puppets. Including
He's sitting on top of the piano over there.
What are we looking at, Don?
Pee-wee.
Oh, you got a Pee-wee over there?
Mecca lecca hi, Mecca hiney ho.
Yes, indeed. Here he is.
Oh my God!
There he is. Well, at least he's got his pants on.
So were you the supervising producer on season 1? Is that right?
Yes, in New York City, we did the puppets. Well, we did the whole show, but it included Cherry, which was a human puppet with the big hands, and it was quite the mixed media extravaganza. I didn't know you then. That was before my time. I was home watching that. Right.
I was in college watching that.
Well, we said that when we were doing Pee-wee's Playhouse on CBS Saturday morning, when still the networks controlled Saturday morning programming, that we had 2 audiences: the people who got up early to watch Pee-wee's Playhouse and the people who stayed up really late to watch Pee-wee's Playhouse.
That would be me, yeah. Circa 1983 or whatever.
1985, 1986.
Good times.
Yeah.
So Annie, have you ever been to Ithaca for the Ithaca Festival Parade?
I was in Ithaca when they had some kind of light thing in the wintertime. Is that it? Or is that different?
No, this is,
That's light in winter, which we no longer have, but we still have the annual Ithaca Festival Parade, complete with puppets, not as good as yours, of course.
Oh.
And we often create something for PRI to march in the festival. So if you happen to be in Ithaca
yes.
when we're hosting it, feel
Yes,
free to improve our...
the first Thursday of June, usually.
Oh, it's coming up.
Coming up, yeah.
Yes, it's coming. Well, it'll fit right into your tight deadlines, right?
Yes, right.
You're right at home.
This is where I plug my next performance.
Yeah.
So I'm performing in 2 shows this year at the New Victory Theater on 42nd Street. I actually just came off a mini tour. I don't even think I told you this, Steve. So the company's called Manual Cinema, and they do live movies, basically. So it's a theatrical performance. There's a big screen. Let me see if I've got a picture of it. Let me go back to sharing my screen.
Okay.
Now that I'm a pro at this.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's called Leonardo. It's a wonderful show about a terrible monster. And I am Leonardo, who is like a Muppety guy. And how they do it is they have 2 camera stations. So the one you can see on the left of this screen is where the live action happens with these, girls in outfits, and then the Muppet character. And then we have another station where it is paper puppets and pages of a book that turn. And then on the other side of the stage is a woman who's basically the narrator and does all the music and stuff. And it's based on Mo Willems, who's two of his books. He's a children's book author. You might know him from something, Don't Let the Pigeon Drive the Bus. I think that's probably, and Gerald and Piggy, and something Snuffle Bunny. That's his stuff. But it's very cool. And so that is in June at the New Victory Theater. It's 45 minutes. It's for children, but there's actually a really cute trailer on the New Victory website if you have no intention of going. I'm not in that video. I'm actually the understudy for the woman who originated the role. And then once again, we're going to be doing Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas, the musical version. And I am the left squirrel, as well as Oldie Possum, Howard the Snake in the Nightmare Band. And who else am I? I think I'm Harvey Beaver in a tiny vignette. But that is the Paul Williams musical that we've been trying to mount for 13 years. It was on last Christmas, but we got shut down with Omicron, and but we hope it goes off without a hitch this year. And there's my website. There's a plug.
Cool.
But you've seen a lot of pictures from my website today. So yeah, that's what's going on. And I'm going to a crawfish boil, Steve. I'll see you there, right?
Are you gonna go?
Yeah, we're going.
Oh, excellent. Monty, how are you doing?
Good.
You look like a puppet.
He's my little puppet. He's a good boy.
Well, Annie, that was fantastic.
Yes,
Awesome.
that was-
Well, thank you all for coming.
See all your
Yeah,
photos.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I just put a couple of links in the chat if anyone wants to donate to support Science in the Virtual Pub and the other things that PRI does.
So Don, you're a educator,
I am.
and you know Annie how?
I was her high school earth science teacher.
No.
Yes, that's how this whole thing happened.
That's fantastic.
Interesting
Right.
thing to note, though, it was the year Jim Henson died, was the year I was in your class, 1990.
Oh, yeah.
Not to
I
bring
can't believe
it
it's
down,
been that
but
long for either of those things.
everything was a long time ago.
Yes, indeed.
Well,
Yes,
Don, carry on your good work.
yes. Well, thank you for joining us.
Oh, this is great.
Yeah. It was a really wonderful talk. We've been.
And Annie, I know that you've always been an excellent craftsman, but the details that I've learned tonight exceed my recollection of your prowess. So
Thank you, sir. I always work with the best.
yeah.
Yeah, and this is live on YouTube, and so there's a recording that's instantly available. priweb.org/YouTube. You can find it, and I'll send you the link, Annie, and you can share it
Awesome.
as you'd like. And it'll also be linked when I get around to it. I will be on the road most of tomorrow, so it probably won't happen until Monday, but it'll be linked from the events page of Science in the Virtual Pub. And thank you all. Man, there is
Monty, hit the bell 3 times. Excellent.
Always the director. Thank you, Mr. Haas.
Good night,
Thank
all.
you, Annie.
Thank
And
you, Annie.
March 25th will be our final one for the season with our climate change education panel. And that'll be live from Resurgence Brewing at
March
Wednesday.
or May?
25th.
March or May?
May, sorry. Yes, we're not going back in time. Thank you, Pat. All right, and have a wonderful evening all. And thanks so much, Annie.
Good night.
Quite welcome.
Bye.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye, Monty.